One of the things we haven't discussed when we've talked COVID has been what's going on in schools. And remember, we were saying the other day how just before school began, we talked about this a lot, saying what's going to happen now. Kids are going back. The government has really not implemented any kind of a program. You can choose to wear a mask or not now if you go to school, right?
Yeah, nobody's wearing masks.
There's nothing really going on, despite the fact, as we saw, numbers tell us now that cases are increasing again. Hospitalizations are up. We're back over 2,000 people in hospital yet again. And we're finding out, and I know we didn't talk about this because I don't want to, seem alarmist, but there's a new strain, a new variant now in Europe that possibly could be moving here. But we've heard nothing since kids have been back in school. That's now over a month. And the government has apparently chosen not to release the data. In other words, they have the information, but they're not sharing it with the public, which makes no sense at all.
I just can't. I'm just shaking my head.
Well, thank God for people like Olivier DROUIN, who runs the site COVID Écoles Quebec, and is probably more in touch with parents, clearly more in touch than the government ever was and even is now. He's on the line. Olivier, thanks for being here again this afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Can you kind of clarify? I want to make this like me saying this. There is no data available from the government as to what's going on in schools since kids went back?
That is correct. So if you remember when Omicron started in January, we had at the time a PCR test for everybody so they could count the number of COVID cases. After that, when PCR tests were no longer available in the general population, they started to track absenteeism for both teachers and kids. And that stopped completely at the end of last school year. At the beginning of this school year, we had nothing. So to this day, there is no information being published. What I've learned and what some journalists learned is that they have been collecting the data since September 6th at the request of the Ministry of Health, the MSSS, but they're not releasing it, as you said, to the general public. The only piece of information that we've had is on September 29th when Dr. Boileau actually quoted, based on a question he received, that there had been at least a minimum of 6,000 cases in schools at that point in time, in only 24 days of school.
Boy.
So if that trend would continue, we're probably more than 8,000 today, as of today. And at 5 days of missed school each, that's probably more than 40,000 missed days of school for teachers and children.
By the way, and I'm seeing some posts on Twitter about flu outbreaks, and we talked to a doctor just before the news saying the same thing, right? We've ignored the flu season because it's kind of ignored us during COVID. Do we know what's going on in schools? Is it flu? Is it COVID from what you're seeing or hearing from parents?
Both. I'm hearing from parents and teachers that it's both, actually. So there's absenteeism is quite high in both the teachers and the kids, and in both cases, you have the two that are jointly impacting as the general population, but kids in particular, and the emergency rooms of our kids' hospital are also have more kids these days with the flu symptoms and COVID.
So we had it in our household just a few weeks ago, and that meant our daughter missed 5 days of school. And when she returned, Olivier, she wore the mask for the next 5 days like she was supposed to. But nobody was telling us that should happen or checking. Like one day she forgot to bring the mask, and I'm calling to find out, can you give her a mask and blah, blah, blah. All of this to say it's very loosely structured, and it feels like a recipe for disaster. Parents are left kind of floundering, trying to figure out what is the right thing to do.
Is there no protocol in schools right now, Olivia?
There is the protocol Natasha was referring to, which is basically after your 5 days, when you come back to wear the mask for 5 days, but there's no enforcement of this rule. The teachers are being told to use their personal holiday bank for their 5 days of isolation. So guess what happens? I receive letters on a daily basis where both parents and teachers decide to send their kids to school, even though they know he or she is positive, because they don't want to use those days. So we're having lack of structure is actually having the reverse impact, where people are testing less. There's less demand for these rapid test kits in the pharmacies, drugstores, and the people with symptoms are coming back. And now what we've heard yesterday from Dr. Boileau is that he's entertaining the thought of even removing the 5 days.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because he said, I think the story is that in Ontario they've already done this, right? So they're a step ahead of us this way.
That is correct. And you mentioned earlier in your intro that the new variant in Europe, well, it's actually already in Quebec. So the BQ1, which is a BA5 subvariant, is in Quebec, has been for the last 2 weeks. So it's growing in terms of its impact on the population.
And what do we know about it? Is it more serious in terms of the way you end up with whatever your symptoms happen to be?
They have gastro symptoms like stomach and flu type symptoms, but the worrying part when you hear about these subvariants is that they evade immunity more than the traditional variants that we have today.
So more resistant to the vaccines that we have.
Correct.
Olivia,
Yeah.
I'd like to know if we know that there were 6,000 cases at that point, and we're guessing that there's probably 8,000 cases now. Why is this information not being released? If they are gathering the data, is there not a responsibility or even like an access to information thing that demands that they release this information?
As a citizen, I can tell you that I requested this information officially through the Access to Information Law. But why are they not doing it? Most likely political reasons. We just had an election, so they probably didn't want to have this information visible. But now that the election is over, we're hearing next week there's going to be potentially a new Ministry of Education. So hopefully we're going to start fresh and have more transparency for cases in schools, because we know if you take 5 to 10% of those cases that we talked about that have long COVID symptoms, that's 600 to 800 children that could be suffering from the consequences of this lack of action in terms of COVID in schools.
I saw that.
And it's easy to fix, right? We don't have to impose masks. We could just simply address ventilation.
So where are we at with that? What's the latest?
There has been no movement in terms of the ventilation. There's been a lot of lip talk in terms of what they thought they are doing, but no concrete action in terms of buying additional air purifiers or exchanger. As you probably heard, I personally was building my own do-it-yourself Course Heroes and Tall boxes and distributing them for free, donating them to teachers in schools. I've donated at least 10 as of today, and continuing to build them on a volunteer basis to help things move a little bit.
Hard to believe that's what it's come to, having to build your own because the government can't get its act together to make sure that schools get this equipment. We have to wrap it up. I did want to ask you one thing you just kind of casually dropped in there about Jean-François Roberge. You're hearing he won't be the education minister?
The Prime Minister himself has actually verbally mentioned this in a press conference that he did not confirm Mr. Roberge for education, and now lots of speculation around potential names like Madame Suzanne Tremblay from Hall, who's a former union representative, as a teacher union representative, could be a candidate, and there's many others. So yeah, that's what we're hearing right now.
Interesting.
I wish it could be you.
Come back.
You would be the best, but obviously you're not in office.
You can run in the next election. Olivier, thank you so much. Appreciate the time this afternoon, and keep up the good work.
Always a pleasure.
COVID Écoles Quebec, really everything to do with education and COVID is on that site. Way more information than you'll get from the government.
Just follow him on Twitter too.
Great idea.
DROUIN.